Hello all, welcome back to New Chapters. My name is Sarah, and if this is your first time joining me, I just want to say thank you for stopping by for this chapter of my life. I'm a hobby hopper, so if this isn't the content you usually watch me for, I hope you enjoy this hobby as well, and will stick around for today's video. Today we're going to be doing another WIP and Chat. WIP, W-I-P, just stands for work in progress. You can grab your own projects to work alongside me today, or you can treat this as a podcast and just listen as I chat. Some things that I'm using today for tools and whatnot. I have this kit still from Enabler's Outpost. It's called Winter Girl. It's the kit that I'm going to be using today. I also have my diamond painting pin here from Diamond Art Club. I have the standard tip on this end, and then I do have their stainless steel tip on the other side. And I have, let's see, I changed out my glue dots. I have the micro size glue dots in here now. I did have to use two of them, but I was giving them a try just to see if I like that size any better than the mini glue dots. And then I also I removed the washi tape, and I'm not sure how well you'll really be able to see it here, but I did remove the washi tape and I placed a clear hair tie, like one of those really teeny tiny, like I always called them kid size because my hair's so curly and thick, it doesn't really do anything for my hair. But I placed one of those around the base of it and kind of, there's a hole in the very bottom of the tip, so I was able to push it up underneath and then kind of wiggle it down to keep it in place, just like the washi tape does. So far it's been holding up, but I've only used it once like this, so we'll see how it goes today. I also am using my Dreamer Designs tweezer. These are just the standard tweezer that come in the kit. So if I do need tweezers for any reason, I have that nearby and handy. I also have my tray here from Firefly Diamond Art. This does have interchangeable bases as well as a lid and a little trash container, but I have the rest of those off to the side already. And then I've decided with this kit, some of the colors are pretty light, and sometimes it can be hard for me to see them, especially like these like clear glow in the dark drills when I'm using the white base from the Firefly element tray. So I also have this purple tray, which is just the boat that came in this Enabler's Outpost kit. So I will be using that potentially as well if there are, again, like light colors that I'm having difficulty seeing in the tray. And then over on the side, you won't be able to see it, but I do have everything kitted up in a set of Elizabeth Ward containers. So I believe that is all of my housekeeping today. So while I remove a chunk of this to get started, how are you guys doing? What is going on in your life? Anything fun or exciting or interesting going on? Anything not so interesting going on? Tell me about what's going on in your life down below. As we get into kind of the spring season, I assume that people have more stuff going on. That tends to be the case. We tend to have less, in my opinion at least. It always just seemed like there was always less going on in like the spring, or I'm sorry, in the fall and winter. But then as spring hit, I always had summer outdoor sports and things like that. So I felt like I was always doing a lot more in the spring and summer months. So let me know what's going on in your life, what sorts of things are going on, either for you or your family, anything that's kind of out of the normal for you. I'd love to know about it down below. All right, let me see if I can get this a little bit more where I want it. That's still not great. I love when release papers line up perfectly and you don't have to worry about there being like a crooked edge either on the top or the bottom, so you can actually line everything up right. And maybe it's just me because that seemed to line up totally fine this time, but a minute ago it was not lining up well. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's see, what color do I want to get started with here? I've been using a light pad off and on a little bit recently, so my canvas currently feels very dark to me and hard to see because I've been using my light pad, but I didn't really want to use it with the camera because I wasn't sure if that would make it too bright and the camera would like have difficulty picking up what I'm actually doing here. All right, this is in. I love that satisfying popping noise with a new glue dot. It is always, as I said, satisfying. Very nice. I will say, speaking of glue dots and stuff, I mentioned that I took this one, or I recently replaced the ones that I have in this particular pen. Um, I had been using a mini-sized glue dot, and I had been doing a decent amount of diamond painting kind of in my downtime the last couple weeks, and I was able to take that same glue dot and use it like on all four sides basically. So I ended up taking it out of the pen the way it was when it started to kind of run out of juice, so to speak. And then I flipped it completely around so it was 180. So that side really hadn't touched any drills like at all. It had just touched the inside of the pen. And then I was still able to take it out and get a little bit more use out of it after that side got kind of roughed up um, and wasn't sticking anymore. And was able to flip it around so that I was then doing like the 90-degree side, and then I flipped it all the way around and did like the 270-degree side. So if you're getting rid of your glue dots after just one use on one side, I highly recommend if it, I mean, and you can see, like I could see which sides had been pretty well beat up and used at that point. So I would have been able to tell if it really wasn't going to last me as long. And it didn't last as long when I flipped it around and whatnot, but I was able to get a lot more use out of it than I anticipated because I just kind of kept flipping it around to new clean sides that hadn't touched any of the outside elements, so to speak. So that's maybe a good tip or trick if you've never tried that before and you use glue dots. Just flip around what you got in there and shove it back in, and you might be able to get a little bit more diamond painting out of it. All right. So I feel like I don't have a whole lot of stuff to talk about this week. Um, Nothing at least too major, it seems. I'm kind of, in between things now with quitting and applying to some new jobs and whatnot. So, as you guys heard last week, I applied to one of my old positions that I used to work for, but I'm not anticipating hearing back from them immediately. So, we'll have to see how long it takes them to respond. I'm hoping it's sooner rather than later, but I mean, I applied on the day that the position opened, and then it's not supposed to close again for like 2 weeks from the day that it opened. So I don't know if I'll hear back immediately following that or if it'll take them a couple days. If they still are doing interviews like they did when I originally worked there, it's like a two-step interview process, and it's a panel of people for the first interview. And there's a panel of like supervisors. So I would assume that all of the supervisors would probably have to come to a consensus about which candidates they want to interview and all that. So I'm sure that it takes, after they finally close the position, it'll take a little while for them to, sit down and go through all of the applicants and then make their decisions on who they want to interview. So I would imagine that I won't hear immediately from them, but I'm hopeful. I've been already thinking about, ways to be a better probation officer if I were to get an opportunity to work in that field again. So definitely excited about that possibility, as I mentioned last week, but trying not to fret over it too much since, it'll be a little while before I have an answer. And that's only an answer to the first interview round. No, nothing beyond that, at least not yet. But yeah, so mostly this week, I did receive a letter from HR from the employer that I just left. Basically, since I had, texted in my resignation and hadn't given like an official written statement. I mean, I texted them, so it was written, but I didn't like send a letter to HR or whatever. So HR sent me a letter that I had to sign for, which was a little bit difficult because our doorbell is more like a buzzer, so it's really hard to hear when somebody rings it if I'm, not in a dead quiet environment, or downstairs are working on something. Like if I'm upstairs, it's really hard for me to hear it. Um, and so I realized that someone had rang the doorbell eventually, but it took me a second. And by the time that I like made it to the window to see who was there, the mailman had already like gotten back in his car and had driven away and had left a little note that was like, "You have to sign for this thing," and I didn't know what it was. And since I had received a letter from the government agency that I had applied to for the probation position, it wasn't with that department, but another department had sent me that letter that was like, "Hey, we're not currently hiring anymore, but we do plan to hire for this position again in the summer, and we'll reach out to you directly when we do repost this position." Since I had received a letter from them, part of me thought maybe I had gotten a letter from HR for the probation position saying, like, I don't know, my worst fear was that it was saying something like, "You're not eligible to reapply for this position for whatever reason." So I was kind of panicking, but I didn't know what the letter was for or about because I just said HR. And again, my head went immediately to HR from that particular government entity that I had received a letter from the week before, 2 weeks before, something like that, and ended up being from my former employer that I just quit. Um, their HR team just telling me, like, you're not allowed to claim unemployment. You quit voluntarily, and we offered to employ you at a different position. So if you were to try to file for unemployment, we'd contest this. And I was like, okay. And it also was like, we've received your resignation and are accepting it officially from this or from this letter or whatever. So I was like, that's fine. But I thought it was kind of funny because I don't know. I guess I've never tried to file for unemployment, so I don't know what all the rules are. But I always thought that you had to um, get fired from somewhere in order to claim unemployment, not quit voluntarily. So I was a little bit confused about that. But maybe I've just been wrong this whole time about how that works. I don't know. But yeah, I got a little letter from them that just said that, they had offered to employ me, so I couldn't claim unemployment, and I had officially resigned my position as of, I think it was like April 1st was the date. Whoops. So got that letter a couple of days after they originally tried to send it to me. Had to be on guard for the mail person the next couple of days after that because I was like, I would like to not miss this again. Because again, I was panicking, thinking it was like we're not even going to consider your application for the job that I am at this point in time much more interested in having. And I was like, oh man, I don't know what I'm going to do if they won't even interview me. I was like, it would have been par for the course considering I've been having such a difficult time trying to get a job and get interviews and stuff the last couple of months. And I was like, it would have been just my luck to be told by the one place that, like, I'm not a guaranteed candidate for, but like, I would imagine I have the best shot at being qualified for this position. So I thought it was kind of concerning that I was maybe not even going to get an interview with, you know, that employer. Although, as I said, right now I don't even know if I'm going to get an interview. I'm just assuming and hoping that I will. But yeah, got that letter from them. They also sent me like an email that was like a employee, like an exit survey, and I should have worked on that. I planned to, but I kind of forgot about it for a couple of days, and I believe it like was only valid for a certain number of days from the time they sent it to me, and I missed that window of time. So I did not end up doing the exit survey, though I should have. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what I would have said that would have necessarily changed anything about how things work. I mean, they can't really change too much about how the day to day operations work for that position. I mean, maybe they could do additional training for staff to be like, don't be so like wishy washy about what we stand for and what we're going to do here and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know that that's something that you can really train out of people. I mean, because that was part of the arguments that I kept hearing, was that the people who'd been there for a longer time, they felt like they were owed certain things that they weren't necessarily getting, or that they were right because they'd been there longer. And so then when new staff would come in with new ideas or differences of opinions, that's where everything kind of seemed to break down and fall apart. And people were having trouble being consistent across the board because of those things, which, again, I mean, is kind of par for the course of working anywhere, probably, but in an environment that I was already uncomfortable in and just not feeling it, it was not something that I was willing to wade through, I guess is probably the best way to put it. Um, but yeah, so I got that exit survey email, but I did not end up completing it in the time frame that I needed to in order to give them feedback. And I don't know, I guess part of me was kind of procrastinating on it because I was like, well, if I give myself some time to think about what I want to say and like how to say it professionally and all that, then I can come back and I can do it later. But then it became, a few days later and I had forgotten about it. And then it became even more days. And I was like, oh crap, I haven't done that yet. And then it just didn't happen. So definitely, my bad for not filling that out. And again, I probably should have, but it kind of fell off my list of priorities. Trying to keep up with some other things and apply to jobs again and all of that kind of stuff. Let's see. What else has been going on? Oh, yeah. We did have the eclipse last week, so I'll try to remember to insert a couple of pictures that I took here. Where I'm at in the US, we got, I don't know, I think it was supposed to be like 80 to 90% totality. We definitely were not a full totality eclipse, but I did take a couple of pictures. I like put my eclipse goggles on my camera lens of my phone and like took a couple of pictures that way. Because just taking pictures of the sun without the eclipse goggles on the lens, you could just see the sun. It really wasn't anything that you could tell what was going on. Perhaps if we had been in the complete totality, you would have been able to see. I don't know. But since we weren't in full totality, again, it was mostly just like you took a picture of the sun and it was just glaringly bright. So I took a couple of pictures with the solar eclipse glasses that I had so that I could actually get pictures of, the eclipse itself. I'm sure they're not the best quality compared to, something that like a high power device that's intended to take those sorts of pictures would be able to take. I mean, taking a picture of an object that's that far away is pretty hard to like capture well on a camera phone anyway, but definitely tried my best and got a couple of decent pictures. I mean, you can tell what's going on, I think. They're just not quite as clear as I would like them to be. But anyway, we had the eclipse happen. Um, if you guys are in the US, you'll have to let me know if you were able to see the eclipse at all and what kind of percentage of totality you were in if you traveled to go see it. I don't care that much about it. Like, I wasn't going to go travel somewhere to get an even more totality, a more total view of the eclipse. Um, like, I didn't care that much about it, but I was like, it is pretty cool as just like a phenomenon in general. And, being able to see something that maybe isn't going to happen again for, what was it, like 30, 40 years at a minimum. I can't remember what they kept saying about it. But I know it's not going to happen for quite a while longer again, at least over the US. So I was like, might as well see this event while I can. I mean, it's a rarity, so take advantage of it if you get that opportunity. I just had Eclipse glasses. I had ordered a drink from Sonic that they were using that was like a solar eclipse promotional drink thing that they were doing. And it came with a free pair of glasses. So that's how I got my Eclipse glasses. They were rated to, be certified to protect your eyes and stuff from the sun. So I figured it was good enough for me to go outside for 10, 15 minutes and stare up at the sun. I didn't look at it the whole time. I was taking pictures and, every 5 minutes or so I'd put the glasses on and look up for 30 seconds or so, and then I'd look back down anyway. So hopefully, even if they were not great, but supposedly they were safe and certified and all of that, according to Sonic and the internet. So I figure that should be good enough, hopefully. But hopefully, no permanent damage to my eyes if that was not the case. But yeah, I figured it was a pretty cool thing I could go see. As I said, I took a couple pictures. My partner was at work at the time, and he sent me a couple of pictures of the shadows because the shadows like got blurry, which I wasn't paying attention to see myself in person. So I don't know if I could have had the same sort of results that he did. But he took like a picture of a tree and all of its leaves, and they were all like super blurry on the ground because of the way that the light was, being interfered with from the eclipse. So that was pretty interesting. I hadn't even thought about that being something to pay attention to. Um, I think he took a picture of himself too, like a silhouette, and he like it looked like he had hair sticking up out of the top of his head because it was all staticky looking. It wasn't actual static, but like that's the way it appeared. Um, Kind of like when you put your hand on one of those electric like little orb things that makes all your hair stand up. Was kind of like the picture he sent me while he was watching the eclipse outside with his coworkers. But yeah, so that happened. And I also, oh, what was I going to say? I totally lost it. Something about the eclipse. Oh, I thought it was interesting too. Like, even though we didn't go into full totality, it was funny because like people talked about, animals might behave a little bit differently, or like it might get dark enough that like animals will start like their night routines and all that. So I was like, well, we're close enough. Maybe that sort of thing will happen around here for us. I wasn't sure. And I didn't necessarily experience animals behaving oddly, but I did find it kind of interesting that like once it actually got to the point of like its peak darkness, I could tell that the sun had mostly been blocked because the temperature changed. Like it didn't shift a lot, but it got cooler, like pretty dramatically. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, it makes sense, to have less sunlight beating down on you, so the temperature drops a little bit. But it was kind of interesting that I thought it was, you know, it happened enough that I could feel it, and I was not really anticipating that being something that I would experience in this whole sort of eclipse situation. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, so that was, I mean, again, it wasn't something that I would have traveled for, but it was cool that I could just go into my backyard and look up at the sky and see a, solar eclipse happening in the middle of the day. Which I wouldn't have probably gotten to see if I had still been working at my other job because I would have been working and I would have been at work on a Monday. And with as crazy and hectic as everything is, I highly, highly doubt that I would have had time to step outside and see it in its entirety while it was actually like happening. I might have been kind of aware of it or had a second or two to go glance, but I don't know if they would have done anything special to let the kids go see it or not. And if they had, it probably would have been a horrible day like Easter had been. Um, at least that's my speculation about it. So yeah, so saw the eclipse, and then as I said, there really hasn't been a lot else going on. I talked to my friend again that I've been talking to. She kind of helped me grasp some thoughts about some things that I've been thinking about with potentially going back to my old job and what it would mean and what sorts of things I could do differently and better, and kind of got to bounce some ideas about conversations and how to go about sounding professional when having those conversations. Since she's in the same field, she was a good person to kind of spitball some ideas off of, and have someone who was knowledgeable about what I was saying. There are some other people in my life that I could talk to about these things, and they would try to respond appropriately and give me their best advice and opinions, but they don't necessarily know how the ins and outs of the criminal justice stuff works. So it was nice to talk to her and be able to just say what I needed to say without having to try to explain myself at the same time, at least not like the terms and the concepts and all that kind of thing. So it was really nice to be able to touch base with her on that. She's been having some relationship drama, I guess is the best way to put it. She's a lot like me and she'll get in her head about things and spend time kind of obsessing over stuff. So we definitely have had a handful of conversations over the last couple of weeks about me with this new job potential and wanting to have this job opportunity even open to me before I even knew that it was going to be a job opportunity. And then we've been talking about her relationship and some different things that have been happening that she's like, I think I'm in my head about this, but I don't know. And kind of walking through each other's anxieties and obsessions a little bit at this point in time in those different categories of our lives. So that's been nice to get to talk to her about it. And again, just having someone who I can kind of bounce those things off of and be like, okay, tell me what you think about this. Tell me if this sounds ridiculous. Give me your advice and opinions. And then on the flip side, I'm doing the same thing for her, just in a different capacity. But those are my favorite kinds of friendships, the people who will overthink with me and alongside me and will tell me when I'm being stupid too. If I'm doing something or saying something that is completely out there off the wall or no employer would let me do that, all that kind of stuff, would like to have feedback, those sorts of things. She's a great person for that. We think a lot alike, so we're pretty easy to help each other because we understand each other's thought processes. Now sometimes we're a little bit too close and we kind of end up becoming, just like a backboard for the answers we want because we know the other person will agree with us because they think the same way that we think. So sometimes we have to go to some other people besides just the two of us to get better ideas, but we're always good sounding boards for each other. Anyway, and we oftentimes are like, okay, do what I say here, not what I actually do, because I recognize that you told me this exact same thing at an earlier point in time, and I did not follow that advice. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't follow both of our advice in the same or similar situation. So we definitely are able to be like, okay, when I'm not the one in the middle of this situation, I see clearly that this is how this should go. And I recognize that I would not do this myself in this situation. I would do exactly what you're doing, but I recognize being not you in this situation that I should be, doing something differently than what we would both naturally want to do. So we're able to sometimes have that perspective shift when we're not the one actually dealing with the drama or the problem or the obsession or whatever, even though we recognize if it had been us, we would have been in the same spot as the other person. But yeah, so we talked, and then recently I watched Quiet on Set, and then, which was definitely interesting. I wouldn't say that I liked it because that seems like the wrong thing to say. But it was very interesting. Kind of feel like it needs a little bit of a trigger warning if you haven't seen it yet. I know I'm a little late to the game watching it, and by the time you guys see this, it'll be a little late to the game posting it. Um, but I mean, it was certainly interesting. I grew up watching Nick. I grew up watching all of the shows that they talked about. And it's funny because I remember sometimes being uncomfortable by some of the scenes that they talked about filming that made them uncomfortable at the time, even as a teenager or a pre-tween, I guess, probably was when I was watching it myself. So it was kind of interesting to see that maybe there was a reason that I felt uncomfortable at those points in time in my life while I was watching it, even as an audience member. But certainly interesting and brings up a lot of good points about, child actors and safety and protections. And I know there's been a thing with like Honey Boo Boo recently and some drama with that and her being a child actor and her getting paid or not getting paid or whatever. So I know that's been a big topic of conversation in a couple of different spheres, really, about how to make sure that if we have child actors that they're getting paid appropriately and that they're being compensated and that they're protected physically and mentally even while they're filming. And just bringing up the whole idea of like, should we even have kid actors and things like that anyway? So definitely was interesting. Also watched the new Fallout series with my partner. I haven't played any of the Fallout like video games before, but I've watched some people play them on like YouTube during like Let's Play and things like that. So like I was kind of familiar with the storyline a little bit, or at least the notion of Fallout and what it meant. Um, I thought they did a really good job with it. Again, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily true to the game, but I thought it was good just as a show itself. Definitely set itself up for a second season, so I'm hoping. I believe we looked it up, and I think it's been confirmed that they have a second season already coming up that they're going to be doing. So I'm hoping that's true because I'm already like, I need the second season now, please. But I definitely enjoyed watching Fallout. Um, I don't know that there's really anything in particular to say about it. I thought it was really good. So those are some things that I've been kind of watching and being entertained by, I guess, to some extent, horrified by in some ways as well, but also entertained by in some others. Um, Man, I think that's really about it. I don't have trying to double check here on my list and see if there's anything else I wanted to say before I wrap up. I did just randomly want to tell you guys, I talked about it in a previous WIP&Chat about trying to get my car registered, and like the system went down, I think it was nationwide, on the day that I tried to register my car. And I didn't know that because I had just dropped off all my paperwork in a little Dropbox option that they had. But I did officially get my, I got a notification from my bank that the check cleared. So I presumed that that meant the system was back up and running, um, because I would imagine they, wouldn't cash my check until they were able to process the registration being updated. And then I did get my stickers in the mail. So for any of those of you who were perhaps waiting on pins and needles to hear if my car ever got re-registered, it did actually get registered, and I got my stickers by the end of March, which meant that it was never at any point in time expired. So that was awesome. Definitely was a little concerned about it when, the week before I was like, oh no, the whole system's down and they have no idea when it's going to be back up. So, again, very random tidbit, but I thought I'd fill you guys in case you had wondered about what was going on with my car registration after my previous WIP&Chat when I talked about that. But yeah, as I said, I really don't have a lot going on this week. Nothing, at least, that I made note of that I thought was important enough to share. So probably has been pretty boring this week since I don't really feel like these have been super interesting facts. Mostly just a lot of waiting around and hoping to hear back about a potential job opportunity. But again, I don't expect that I'll hear anything until the post closes next week. So hopefully I hear something shortly after that, but I'm trying not to be too unrealistic with my timeline if I can avoid it. Granted, since I quit my job, I need a job much quicker. So hopefully I hear back soon, but again, I'm not really in control of their timeline, unfortunately. But I do believe that's really all I have for today for you guys. So I'm kind of cleaning up my last color here. I'll go ahead and say thank you all for watching today's video. If you're looking for more content related to this chapter of my life, please check out my diamond painting playlist. I'll have it linked in the card. Sometimes it doesn't pop up in the video though, so it should be around the description box if it does not pop up as a card on the video. But yeah, if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more content about this chapter and others. And please leave any comments or questions you have down below. I'll see ya in the next one. Bye.